Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7 o'clock. I would like to call to order the February 24th, 2020 regular board meeting of the Othello School District Board of Directors. We will begin tonight with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to welcome our guests tonight. Thank you for being here. I will entertain an approval of tonight's agenda. A motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
I will make the motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Johnson,
I second.
second by Director Lindsay.
I would like to make an amendment. I would like to also add under, I'm still trying to get in, hold on, I'm sorry. Under G1, upcoming events, I would like to add March 7th is a Saturday. It is, I'm not even sure what the exact title is. It's like cleanup days for the Sandhill Crane Festival. Everyone is meeting that doesn't already belong to a group that has a specific assignment for a location. Everyone is meeting in the district parking lot at 9 a.m. with work gloves. That doesn't mean like warm gloves. That means like something you can really pick up garbage with. For those that are on dangerous roads, they'll be like orange vests. They will have garbage bags. They will have plenty of places to give people assignments. If you are part of a group that doesn't have an assignment and would like to have an assignment, it's kind of a conglomeration between those on Sandhill Crane Festival and Beautification Committee, basically put together like a cleanup committee every year and try to make assignments to give everybody specific locations and stuff to clean up. So if we can add that to and everyone's invited, if we could add that to the upcoming events.
As maker of the motion, I'm okay with that.
Okay. We have a motion to approve tonight's approve the agenda for tonight. It's been seconded. Director Stevenson has amended to add under G1 a cleanup day for Sandhill Crane Festival with all the details she just gave. As the mentor of the motion, Director Johnson has no objection to that, so all in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on, B1. Do we have any public comment tonight? Okay. B2 is board member discussion. Our first bullet point is a ledge report. Director Stevenson, do we have something for?
Yes,
tonight?
I do. Legislative session started 6 weeks ago, and there are 3 more weeks to go until Sendai, which is the end of the session unless they extend it. And so there's been another big milestone marker. Bills had to be passed out of their House of Origin in order to continue to be moving forward. There's still quite a few bills that are in motion. And so, let's see. I think I have talked about many of these before. Some of them have financial implications for school districts. Some of them just affect us but don't necessarily have financial implications. Those that do not have financial implications that I haven't specifically said something about before is Senate House Bill 1715 is removing school districts' ability to withhold pupils' grades and transcripts. Senate Bill 2551, permitting students to wear traditional tribal regalia and objects of cultural significance at graduation ceremonies and related events. Senate Bill 2589 is requiring contact information for suicide prevention and crisis intervention organizations on student and staff identification cards. Senate Bill 5908, equity and cultural competency training. Senate Bill 6117, appropriations for special educations. House Bill 1182, Learning Assistance Program. House Bill 5572, authorizing modernization grants for small school districts. According to the way that they categorize different school districts, we are considered a middle-sized school district, not a small-sized school district. And then, of course, capital budgets and supplemental appropriations are still in play. So those are some of the upcoming things to be looking for and worried about.
All right, thank you for that. Bullet number 2 is we have a draft agenda for our school board visit site on March 3rd, I believe it is, to OHS. Do we like our itinerary? Is there anything we'd like to change, modify?
I don't think anything, I wasn't concerned with any of the details as the different times, but I think that we need to talk about what kind of students that we want to meet with. When we've been at the elementaries, it's typically been students that have made more than a year's worth of growth in a year's worth of time, but still had a wide range. In the past, it was like 2 students per grade. The high school's a little bit different. I would still like to see a variety of students.
I can't recall actually being at a visit at OHS with the board, so I don't know what students we've talked to.
Often in the past, it's been like their leadership class,
Okay.
and those are the students that typically are getting, until we started saying, this is who we want to meet with, that's always who it was, and those are the most likely students that were getting our attention anyways. So that's when we started saying, those aren't the students we want to meet with. I've liked meeting with the students that have had significant amounts of progress. I would almost say at least 1.5 years, if not 2 years worth of growth.
I would like to hear from our student representative on what she thinks.
That's a
that
great
would be.
idea.
Hi. I do like the idea of hearing from the leaderships, students, just because they have an outlook and they have a wide opinion pool, I guess, that we could all like pick from. But I do like the idea of hearing from more than just them, because at the end of the day, they're not the only voice that could be shown from OHS.
So asking OHS to look through transcripts and see whose GPA has increased that much, or?
Well, there's always, I assume that there's like STAR tests that happen at the high school. There's ESPA. There's all kinds of different state tests and local tests and those kinds of things that could be like, these students have made significant growth, whether it's in a specific subject area or just across the board, you know, or even on the ELL students. They've moved from an EL1 to an EL3 within 1 year. That's significant amount of growth or something like that. So
In addition to the leadership folks, or are we not going to invite the leadership kids?
Hi, sorry. Maybe we could talk to like class officers and ASB officers and have like the presidents come in, so we could have those strong leadership voices along with the students who have increased.
I like that.
I think Alejandro would be able to accommodate something like that. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll make sure that Mr. Vergara and his staff hear about who we want to meet with then.
perfect. And Elise Garza, Elise, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Just, there's been so many times it's been said wrong. I don't want to
Yeah.
mess it up. She is in the middle of volleyball photos right now. So she let me know that she was not going to be able to be here. So I wanted to let you know.
Very good. Okay, just to remind ourselves, it's at 7:45 on the 3rd of March, next Tuesday. Moving on, we asked for information on the ORTC parking lot. There is some info there. I don't know, well, we don't have to have action on it tonight. I think it's for informational purposes, to help us steer our thoughts as to the Band-Aid approach long-term, or what we think, if this will suffice while maybe a miracle happens or something. But anyway, it's there for informational purposes. Don't know if you have anybody has any specific questions on that?
So is the plan, so this was just for area on the photo, this is just area 1. Is there plans to also try to get numbers for area 2 and 3 so that we have that information, or to start moving forward, like in the future?
So the point we're at right now is we've asked numerous companies a couple of years ago for quotes, and we've asked, throughout the last couple of years for quotes, just in an effort to not burn any bridges with contractors. We haven't asked for new quotes for any areas because you don't want to tap the same water source too many times without actually doing anything. So for the district, it would be helpful if we had some direction from the board as to even a do not exceed amount on some repairs so that we can kind of move forward with the process. Like I said, we just don't want to keep going to the same contractors in the area because there's not that many, and just keep asking for quotes over and over and over again without having, I guess, some backing and some, I guess, good faith on the district's part of, we're really going to move forward and do something about this, instead of having them come out over and over and over again.
So maybe we could do, this is just an idea, if we did like area 1 this year, area 2 next year, or are you wanting to move forward with area 1, 2, and 3 all right now?
So obviously the areas are numbered in priority order. Okay. So getting area 1 taken care of right now would be great. It would kind of just depend on what cost or amount the board is willing to support with in doing that, and then we can kind of move forward from there. I mean, maybe we can do numbers 1 and 2. It just kind of is going to depend on the number, what the quote comes back at, what the actual work costs, that kind of stuff.
Is there an actual place in the budget that says for repairs? Do we have a specific place that, where would we take this money from?
So there's not something specific for this. Our budget isn't specific in that nature, in the detailed line items. But I mean, there is a budget for maintenance, but typically these big ticket items are, outside the ordinary, and there's a budget for big items, but once that budget is exhausted, then, it's kind of hard.
Would you suggest this one come out of capital improvements?
You mean capital projects?
Yeah, capital projects.
Yeah, that would be the appropriate place to put this. It's a land improvement, and that's where land improvements typically are paid from. We would need to transfer money into capital projects to pay for it, though.
At this point, I wouldn't have any problem going out to a formal bid for at least area 1 with area 2 and 3 as an option on it, that if it falls within a proper price range, that we could possibly do all 3.
I agree with that, Ken. I don't know what you were going to say, Jen, sorry.
Go for it.
What kind of money are you talking about?
Are you asking Ken that question?
Yeah, or anybody. I
Well,
mean, just like what kind of money do we think is appropriate?
I'm looking at one right now, and it says $38,000, but that doesn't include sales tax permits, compaction test, engineering, or a warranty due to high groundwater in that area. So that's where it could add up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That one could have a potential of being close to $60,000.
I agree.
And the other 2, I have no idea. I know when we did our site visit, area 3 was not a very big area at all, but you never know what
But it was
looks like
sinking
underneath.
fairly substantially, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
it might turn out to be a lot larger one. But that, I guess, through a formal bidding process, that
What if we, I would be comfortable saying, I'm happy with $100,000 and let's see how far that gets us. And then, if it's not going to get us as far as we had hoped, they could always come back and we could make another approval for if there needed to be another amount, so that we're at least moving forward I feel like we've been talking about this specific one for months and months and not moving anywhere. So I'm ready to say, let's go for 100,000 and go as far as we can. And if you need to come back, then come back and talk to us if there's some more that needs to be done.
Because of the amount, this would have to go out to a formal bid
Yeah,
to
yeah,
open.
we would do a formal bid on it.
Okay.
I agree with Jen. I'm comfortable with 100,000. Let's see let's
Far we
stretch
can
that
get it to go.
as far as we can.
I wouldn't want to
Okay.
go anymore.
Yep.
I think we have too many projects.
Okay.
So
Well, I think we need to officially make that a vote then. Or can we just say, that's what we're happy
Actually-
with?
Actually, I think, and I'm not for sure, I think they've got a direction.
Mm-hmm.
They could go out for the proposals, and then they'll bring the proposals
that-
back
Yeah,
to
then
us.
Okay.
bid on
Then we
the
approve the
Great.
Or
proposals.
vote on the proposals.
Yes,
Okay, perfect.
Could be less,
yes.
Maybe it's less.
maybe,
that'd be good.
I mean,
Okay,
it's
we've,
never
uh,
less, but maybe it'll be less.
Spoken as someone that understands construction, thank you.
we also have our bids for the OHS track. We've looked at those, and there's a recommendation in required approvals tonight, as you saw, as to, which way we should go. Do we need to discuss that at all, or are we comfortable with that?
I'm ready to vote when that comes up.
Well, it's coming up in.
I
required
know, right,
approval.
later on
Okay.
in the meeting is what I mean. Anyone else?
Any other
I'm
questions on
ready to
that?
vote, so
Okay,
no
very good.
questions from me.
Also included in the information we requested is the K-3 class size grant information. Does anybody have any more concerns, questions, comments?
I have a question there. So it refers to modulars on a foundation with all the utilities underground and all of those kinds of things. What I want to know, we've been given, because of other issues, we've been given an amount for what it costs to buy a portable. I want to know all of that prep work that needs to be done to be able to count a modular towards this grant, what approximate costs per modular, which is a 2 classroom, would cost. Not, modulars, in my mind, are adequate learning spaces. And if we're getting state money for it, for a grant, but that square footage is not counting against us, which we've already been told, we're already over numbers, then I see that as a win-win. If it ends up being like a 0 cost to us because the state's reimbursing us for those modulars, that's my opinion on, we'd be able to take advantage of the K-3 grant and not have that be a cost to us. I see that as a win-win.
I have a problem with modulars, and reading down through this, the modular built classroom, it states here, the quality of construction must be good enough for the district to certify a 30-year life before needing a major modernization. The building must remain in a single location for 30 continuous years and include trenching and underground utilities. That locks us in that if we ever wanted to build onto the school, that we couldn't move those portables.
Plus, weren't we told a couple weeks ago that 20 was about the most that these really could withstand?
I thought that number was 30, but
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
probably more
I
of
think
like
we
an
had something,
ideal,
but
an
I thought you
ideal
said
state.
20.
But, I mean, portables last longer than that. It just kind of depends on your maintenance of them and your upkeep. But, I mean, I would say between 20 and 30 plus years. Kind of depends.
Yeah, I just have a problem putting a
Me too.
modular on a spot and then we have to keep it there for 30 years, and when the possibility of new construction could come up, and
right, but when it costs 2 or 3 times as much as we're getting from the state to put in a stick-built or something, and then that square footage counts against us, then the K-3 grant, to me, I'd rather leave it on the table in those cases, because the square footage is gonna count against us. We have to pay 2 to 3 times the cost that the state's giving us. In terms of being able to have the square footage and the classrooms, if they were picked in an appropriate spot, my opinion is that would be fine.
Just for reference, modulars are not portables, so modulars are going to be more expensive than portables.
So, other people have used those words interchangeably throughout all of our meetings.
Yes. I might be one of them.
Okay.
I'm not super well versed in that side of it, so I'm not sure exactly what the differences are. But basically, it has to be all engineered, whereas portables don't.
Okay. So I think that if we're not asking what that question is, then what's the cost of buying a modular as opposed to a portable? And what is the cost of having all of that site work done per modular? Then we're not doing our due diligence in finding out all the details. That's my opinion. To find out those things is, I think, needs, for my comfortableness to make a decision, I need to know those things.
I agree with doing due diligence. I agree with that.
Whether it's agreed upon or not is a different story. I'm just stating my opinions in that part of the process. That, but I think that we need to find that out.
I'm just not willing to give it up. We were given it in 2016, and I'm just not willing to just let it pass, so. I think we
Question,
have-
Jeanette, I agree with Sharon about not letting go of the money. Just some clarification. If we, this is hypothetical, if we move forward in the facilities committee and we decide we're going to build a school, we need to have an architect by June in order to capitalize on that money going into our new school. Even, what if we don't break ground on that school for 2 years? Do we still have access to the money?
Yes. On a at an elementary level.
On a
Yes, we
K-6
would.
elementary?
Yeah,
Okay.
because we're still we'd be using that money throughout the 2 years. We'd be getting architect drawings, like there's just a huge long process. So, I mean, that money would help basically pay for that.
Okay, so we just have to have an architect hired by June to move forward with either a new school or the add-ons at each school site?
Yes.
Okay,
So we got a facilities meeting coming up on the
Yeah.
3rd, and this is good information to
this
have
is great
to
information to have.
bring to that. to
Okay,
help us
we'll see what information we can get. They might be kind of rough estimates. Just
Rough's better
because-
than no clue.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do agree with Jen to a certain extent to where if capitalizing on 2.2 has a negative effect on the overall picture, it's something we need to think about. You never want to leave money there. I mean, I don't want anybody to misunderstand that. But if we take a macro view at this and getting 2.2 of free money costs us 10 million that we need for something else or that hinders our overall picture, it'd be something we need to think about. I'm not ready to yay or nay that today. On the modular stuff, how do you certify a 30-year lifespan and what does that entail? And I'm not too keen today on sticking something somewhere where I can't move it for 30 years, in order to capitalize on this, which would be an option, but I'm just not ready to go there. But yeah, as much info as we can get, Jeanette. And I know that we throw a lot at you guys, but what we can, some is better than none.
Okay.
At least it's more food for thought to get the conversation, continue the conversation. Anything else on that? And I think the other document there is just some enrollment numbers for 7, 8, and 9 through 12. Any questions on that?
Does that still leave us next year predicting there's still 312 approximately students that are overcrowded in the elementaries? Since the 6th grade class is larger?
You mean over capacity?
Yeah.
So those are the current numbers,
For
the
the
300
seventh and
some.
eighth grades, but we still have the elementaries that were approximately 312, 310 students for the
Yeah.
four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, they would keep roughly the same. The elementary enrollment, from what I was projecting, looks to be fairly flat, if not a little bit up, but.
So just to be clear, next year, the middle school is not going to be over enrollment even with the preschool there? I see a -10.
You mean over capacity?
Yeah,
So those are current numbers. So current school year, not looking at next year, is the -10. So if you put next year's projected in there with a projected increase of 60 students, then they would be over capacity for the, it's just the main building itself. It doesn't include the portables.
That does not include the 2 portables back, so that's another 50
No.
students.
Yeah.
That's another 2 classrooms.
Well, so the kids are
Basically.
counted. The kids are counted in the enrollment, but the classrooms aren't included in like the classroom space.
What? I'm sorry, that didn't make sense.
So
me.
if you look at the document,
Uh-huh.
you have student capacity. That student capacity, excuse me, is based on classroom space within the main building. So we didn't take into consideration like the offices. So it's not the total square footage, it's just the number of classrooms. And then we multiplied that by the, excuse me, basically the student capacity, which is based on 29 students per class. So the number of classrooms times 29, that's how many kids were funded for per each classroom at the state level. So that's where those numbers come in. And then the student count is the student count.
okay, so if the student count is less than the student capacity, why do we have 2 portables?
So if you look at the student capacity with the pre-K,
Yeah, it's 725.
yeah, so that's the piece. And the reality is those capacity numbers are based on that 29, like I said. And at the middle school level, that's not always the reality. It kind of just depends on the students' schedules and the number of classroom teachers per content area and things like that.
So things like sped classrooms or speech space or those kinds of things
Yeah, we tried to take
changes
those out.
numbers
Yeah.
always.
Yes, yeah, we tried to take those out of the calculation just because they're special use spaces. All those little things you don't think about.
This was a confusing slide for some of the folks internally as well. And one thing that provided some clarity for me was if you think back to McFarland when it was 6, 7, 8, and there were about 900 students there, they still had 6, maybe 8 portable classrooms. So even though it says 1,044, even with 900, the school was it was overfilled. And so the same mindset here. That might be the number it spits out, but day to day, how a school flows and what a principal designs can't hold that many kids.
Thank you. I think that makes a little more sense.
All right. Moving on, B3, student representative reports. We'll let Lauren go first since Elise just got here. She's getting situated. Unless Elise is ready.
No, Lauren can go first.
Okay.
Hi. Okay, so Elise is going to touch on a few more things. I just wanted to talk about how well our OSD Jazz Tour went. We got a bunch of kids super, super excited about the music, and I thought it was super fun to do. So our wrestlers went to state. 2 of them took first place. We had a second place, and then 2 7th place. So they all did super, super well. Speech and debate went to their district tournament. And we have 2 competitors who took first and qualified for state. And Drumline has finished blocking and learning all of their movements, and they are ready for their competition in Portland next month. And thank you to all of you, everybody here who attended Jazz Night. We loved it. Thank you for your support.
I have a question on the band, what is it called?
Drumline?
Drumline, thank you. I know that last year they presented that at like a band concert before they went to the competition. Is that going to be taking place again this year?
Yes, we're hopefully going to march our full show with props and costumes and everything at the March 5th concert.
March 5th.
I believe that's our date, March 5th.
Do we have that on the? Just checking to see if we have that on
Yeah.
our
March 5th.
pre-festival band concert.
Yes.
Awesome.
Drumline will be the last thing on the agenda that night, but we will be performing.
Okay.
Thanks.
So continuing with the OHS, there's a college career day this Wednesday, the 26th, and so freshmen are going on college campus tours to 6 different campuses, and then the rest of the 10th through 12th grade will be doing college and career-based things at the high school. There's a Husky Opportunities Night, the 25th, and it's just to get students excited for things, and there will be AP teachers, high school, college teachers, and dual credit teachers, and it's for incoming freshmen and up to go to see about opportunities for those classes. And then we're also doing mini homecoming week this week. So we have dress-up days all week, and then Thursday we have Buff Puff, where the boys will play volleyball from 5 to 8 p.m., and then we have an assembly on Friday from 9:31 to 10:31. At Luticaga, their PE teacher is partnering with AIM Gymnastics to provide their students with an opportunity to learn about gymnastics, and they're gearing up for the STAMP and ELPA test in the next 2 weeks. At MMS, they have, Hiawatha, they had their 6th grade Math is Cool took first place in competition, and they're having an assembly to prepare for the Sand Hill Crane Festival. And then the last school I got a report from was at MMS, they're starting a speech and debate club and spring drill team that's going to perform during band parades. And also 8th grade students are going to register for high school classes on Tuesday. That's all I
Going
have.
on?
Nice.
Any questions for our reps? Thank you for that report, ladies. Moving on, C1, required approvals. I will entertain a motion to approve required approvals.
I move that we approve the required approvals.
Motion's been made by Director Stevenson.
So, excuse me. I don't know if I'm out of turn or not.
It's okay.
The track bid, though, that's here is just, we're not approving to do the track at all. We're just approving to take the bids, right? We just discussed it prior.
No, this would be to approve.
Those bids for those amounts with those companies.
And we're saying, yes, we're gonna do the track.
Yes. If it is.
Isn't that, okay, wasn't that need to be discussed at the facilities meeting before we say yes? I thought we were discussing at the facilities meeting next week.
Well, we discussed the
did
track at
discuss
the
it
last meeting.
one.
The last
Yeah,
meeting.
but we discussed, I guess I just can't, I'm not sure where the money's gonna come from for that kind of, 50,000.
I think we've talked about it coming from the 5 million that was moved into capital projects,
That's in, no, it hasn't been moved into capital
Or-
projects. We've,
designated, or,
right.
that's my understanding, correct, Jeanette?
Yes, that's correct.
So are we voting on our good, better, best options? I mean, we saw 4 samples. Are we voting on
So,
what one we want to go with?
First of all, there's a motion on the floor, on the table. I don't know what to call that. There's a motion that we need to, and then we can discuss.
Hasn't been
After the
seconded.
Okay, you're right. So,
I will second the motion, so we
Okay,
can
the motion's
discuss
been
it.
seconded.
all right.
Okay, we have a motion to approve required approvals by Director Stevenson, seconded by Director Johnson. Any discussion? Now is the time we can.
So
which one are we moving forward with?
in the bid that they're wanting us to approve, it says recommendation. It is recommended that the board of directors approve the bid from Benyon. Although they are the highest bidder, they provide the district a longer warranty and projected life for the material. And then also, it says the district has estimated an approximate cost of $100,000 in asphalt repairs. It is recommended that the board approve an amount of up to $100,000 in asphalt repairs to complete the track and field work at Othello High School. So if we vote yes, then we're saying go forward with what you're recommending to us. There is I don't know if at this stage there's an option to do it, but in the future, there's an option to pull a specific thing under required approvals so that it has its own line items so that we can discuss that separately, and then vote on that separately.
Actually, tonight, if this gets approved by 3 people, there is no chance to move this tonight already.
Right. I'm saying in the
So we'll
future.
discuss this, yeah.
Right, in the future, if there's a specific issue that needs to be pulled and
Mhm.
discussed or tabled or something, that is an option to do. But they have given us specifically what they want us to do. So under recommendations, it says those details, even though they're giving us both.
Yeah.
all of the
I just wasn't
options.
sure if we, by just approving the required approvals, that automatically says yes, or if we had to vote on that individually.
In this case, because it's
It
all
is
together,
It is approved.
it's a
if
whole big
we
lump thing.
Okay.
Required approvals.
And we don't vote
And-
yes on.
And I believe that the reason why it was brought back to us this time, because it's a time issue,
Yeah.
that if it don't get,
If you're not in
Very
line, if
soon.
you're not scheduled,
then
It
it won't
can
be
be
done
when
this
they-
year,
God
it
knows
will
when.
be one more year down the road.
And we don't say yes, we don't have payroll paid, correct?
Correct.
yes.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve required approvals and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now, on a separate item, we do have a bid for portables. And I know that there's been some questions posed already. And I know that this is a good time to have a further discussion on the document or on that was presented to us. And if we have any further questions for clarification, for if we want to vote on this tonight, or if we want to think about it some more, we want to table this, or which direction we want to take.
I have a few questions. So it says in this information in the background and different things that if we approve it, the preschool would be in portables and that they would be able to use the wrestling room at McFarland as their indoor play space. But I was under the understanding that currently that's being used as a classroom. Is that correct?
Currently,
Yes.
it is being used as a classroom.
So that would be vacated and that class would then go to another space.
It would be an option. It's just one of the things we were looking at as an option for either creating an indoor play space for the preschool or just for options for MMS in general. That would be something we would need to discuss with the building administration, but that was just one of the things that we had thought about.
Okay, for these portables, are we in such a,
I'm sorry, there's a little bit more information coming on that one.
I know that the building principal has had some communication with the teaching staff that are assigned to that current classroom space that was initially a wrestling room and could be a playroom. And they've had some initial conversations about that teacher would actually need 2 spaces. There's some specific program that they do related to career and tech ed. It's a new addition to the MMS sort of offerings. But there would be a space that we could accommodate the program as is. In a more traditional classroom, it would just require 2 classrooms.
Okay. Sorry, Ken.
are these portables required on such a timeline that we have to make this decision tonight? Or can we make it at our next regular meeting after we have our facilities meeting? For further discussion.
As always, time is of the essence with portables, especially considering we're looking at, the number that we're looking at. So time is of the essence.
Okay, because I would personally like to have this information along with the placements of them at our facilities meeting for further discussion.
I'd like a little more time personally also, because I was on the facility committee and a past board member said we could not purchase anything for pre-K unless we ran a bond. I want to make sure that we're following what he told us in our little small groups. We were in our small groups, elementary, junior high, high school. One of the things he said was specifically you cannot build, so I don't know if he means build, does a modular count the same? Or I'd like us to have a little more time for us to do a little more research on that.
Yeah, we can do research on that. I just got information that if the decision is made tonight, we're looking at about mid-July. So
For delivery.
for delivery. And then we have, I'd say, about 2 weeks for setup and all of that good stuff.
And if we wait 2 weeks for our next regular meeting, that means we could be like 2 months because of other
Yeah.
people that get in front of us, potentially.
Yep.
I'm not saying, but potentially.
Mhm.
This is the time that everyone's ordering,
Yes.
and that's how we had a lot of Wahida students somewhere else last year.
I'll remind you guys, if we need to next Wednesday, we can have an action. If our questions are answered, if we do our own research, we can have action at a facilities workshop if we present it that way.
It seems
So-
like we wait for the last minute constantly over the last 3 years, 2-3 years about portables. We should be doing maybe more research prior. I mean, it's always I've listened to other meetings when I'm not able to speak, but that we're always on a timeline that it has to be decided today. Sometimes we have to have a little more information. I thought something was gonna be waiting until the facilities.
Well,
It was a
the thing is,
projected.
I think we're trying to be proactive, getting in line basically is what we're doing. We know the need is there. And as far as, I think the term politicians use is kicking the can down the road. I know we're not trying to do that as a board, but this is way more complex than deciding tonight we're gonna do 5 portables. I mean, there's other factors that come into the decision with pre-K and just all these other things that are there, that it's sometimes hard to say tonight, yes, we're gonna do this, and tomorrow regret not doing a little more research. But I don't think that we're purposely being put like on a deadline. It just happens that way, because there's so much more to this. I wish these were cut and dry decisions that, hey, yes, we're gonna do this, because there's nothing else that factors into this. But unfortunately, this is what we're dealt, and we can do the best that we can, but we can choose, or we can have a action at the facilities workshop if our questions are answered, to where we're ready to make a decision, just to keep that in the back of our minds. I also have a few more questions to ask, not of people that are here tonight, but I have a little more research myself that I want to do before I'm ready. And it more pertains to location, if we went with the second option, even location of where the 2 would be moved to the high school. Where are those going to be put? What are they going to service? What in lieu of, or is that just for the estimated growth that we have? I mean, will that change? Will something be moved into there and something else into somewhere else? Just information like that would be good. But I think, like I said, I think it'd be wise of us at the facilities meeting, make a decision and approve something.
At least have the
That's-
option to be able to make the
Yes.
decision if we're ready.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know we're gonna need the portables. I have no problem getting the portables out we need. It's just the placement, and like I said, I have a few other questions. It was talked about them being wet, and pre-K being in them, and if they're still placed at the junior high on the backfield, can they be wet? Can they be hooked up to water and sewer? Because that's definitely a class that's going to have them, because you can't shuffle them back and forth between the main buildings, so.
Could I attempt to answer some of the questions this evening, and then
Yes.
that'll give you more time to mull
Sure.
it over prior to
Yes,
the
please.
facility meeting?
Please do.
Yep. And so do my best to capture at least some of the ones I've heard. The placement at Othello High School, according to Greg Foltz and his research and background, the most appropriate place would be on what we call the old bus loop, that internal grass area. It's already prepped. It's set up for portables. You could drop 2 in there. In one of the proposed plans, those would be the 2 that are currently on the MMS parking lot. So you could free up that parking lot.
You're talking like the grass behind IT, correct?
Correct. Between IT
How
and the
many
ag building.
could go in that space?
Greg has done some research about the fire codes and the amount of feet in between and those kinds of things, but we would just be asking for 2, and there were 2 in there in previous years. So there's plenty of space to put those 2. But he's done configurations where there are multiple portables in there, and
Okay.
if there was a plan moving forward for the 600 wing and you needed some temporary space, that's one of the spaces that he came up with.
Okay.
I believe he found over 25 potential locations for portables on or near Othello High School. So there's some options.
Okay.
If those went away from McFarland in the one proposed option, we have discussed a couple of placement ideas for the new portables. You could line them up on, certainly on the football field where we had the portables previously. Those could be wet. You're able to come in from that alleyway. I'm not sure what that street is called that dead ends at the water tower. Greg has indicated that power and water would come in from the roadway there, and they would be wet portables. So it would work for our students a little better than they do now. We've also talked about perhaps 2 alternate locations near where that fence is on the alleyway, sort of the home run fence for the baseball field that runs towards the water tower, runs east to west. We could put a line of portables out there in some configuration, so staff could use that parking lot, parent drop-off, that kind of thing. We also talked about, if it was pre-K, putting it a little closer to the water tower, and could they access the current early learning center as an outdoor play space and increase some collaboration between those 2 sites. So those are some of the options we talked about at McFarland for possible placement. Trying to see if you had any other questions that I didn't address.
When we have our facility meeting, can you have those options on maps for us to
Absolutely.
be able to look at?
Yes. We can make
Thank
sure that
you.
happens.
And a question I would have also is if option 2 was adopted and portables became pre-K, I mean, does that mean that there would be no office space, nothing pre-K at MMS? It would all be at these portables if that's the way we went?
I think part of that depends on the placement as well, proximity to that facility. If you decide to order 5 doubles and we're able to access that playroom, they would have the same number of spaces that they currently have. They have 11 classrooms currently. 1 is a playroom. 5 doubles gives you 10 classrooms plus a new large playroom. So it would be a wash facility-wise for the pre-K folks.
So all these portables are just doubles, correct?
5 doubles, correct.
They do have facilities that are larger. Have we took a look at that to see a cost comparison?
We did talk with Greg about the cost comparison. One of his concerns, as I recall, was the custom order, that those are a greater challenge to get and probably the timeline's even further extended.
Okay.
But we did talk about different configurations to make it feel more like a campus sort of vibe, sort of what was talked about for a possible DOHS move. So they don't have to be in a straight line. You could put them in a U shape. You could connect them with some creative ramping, those kinds of things to make it feel more like a campus. There are certainly some ideas out there around that.
I think that we're all ready to table this and to not
Yes.
make a vote tonight and be able to do our facility workshop with the potential that we could be making a decision at that meeting, taking action.
Very good. We will table then C2 to perhaps the Facilities Committee meeting on the 4th is it the 4th? I believe it is. To potentially have a
Yes,
decision
4th.
made that night. Okay. Great discussion, guys. Any other questions you need answered, feel free to pose those questions. That's some good discussion. Moving on, superintendent informational items. Does anyone have a question for Dr. Hurst and the team on the financial report?
Yep.
Yeah. I
Go
do.
for it. Go for it.
Okay. First page, right, the very beginning. General fund balance, 13.4 million. Our 10% required is 6.7. So that leaves us an assigned of 5.1. And we have prior commitments of 1.4. So the $5 million that we have designated to go into capital will come out of the unassigned balance if we transferred that. So that would leave that fund with actually a $195,000 balance if we were to do it right now.
If your math is all correct, and I can't do math in my head, then yes, that would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah, as of this,
That's-
or as of the end of January.
Okay. That was my only question.
We could always decide to change our minimum fund balance number as well. It has consistently stayed at 10%. If we chose to move that number, we could do that.
Yes,
That is
I
correct.
realize.
If there was something else that happened or whatever.
It is a board decision.
Right.
I realize that, yes.
Okay.
And over the last 3 years, that number has went up a lot because of the funding sources and everything else. I believe when I first got onto the board, it was only at
45?
43 or 45.
Something
yes.
around there, right?
Yes, so it has, in the last 3 years, raised quite a bit.
As our budget increases, so does
Yes.
this number.
Yes.
Right. And so because we had a fairly large unassigned balance in the past, that slush to be able to accommodate the higher number has been there. I use that word slush, and I don't think that you like that word slush, but that's just the
Unassigned.
non-math,
Someone-
accounting, I guess I should say.
GL 870, the committed to other purposes, 689,382. What would those,
Where are you at?
I'm on the page 1 still.
Page 1.
Same page Penny was on.
No,
I
it's
was
on page 1 of the actual
Of
numbers
the actual numbers. You are on the, it's on
The
the
general
heading
fund.
up
of the
there.
budget.
The general fund?
General fund
Keep going.
document.
One more. More.
So page 5,
Okay.
Of the
First,
report,
okay,
of the
I just
report. I'm
wanted the
sorry.
general fund,
Yeah.
Excuse me.
right?
So the GL 870,
Yes.
the committed to other purposes in that case is the one-to-one initiative for technology, and then also the infrastructure that goes along with that, the 2 board resolutions that the board passed, however long ago that was.
That's computer, the initiative of 1-to-1 for Chromebooks.
It's technology.
I guess when they always put in their unassigned, or you wonder what, committed other purposes, it kind of leaves you with a kind of thinking. what
I
are
do
those
have a
things?
question on this page as well. Was that all of your questions for that page, for this page?
Yes, go ahead.
So my questions were under expenditures. Let's see. SPED and other education percentages of used are like 5% higher than regular and ed, vocational education. Why would those two be 5% higher than the others?
Every program operates at a different pace. So special ed, typically we can encumber those funds early on in the year. So we know what the contract services are going to be. We know roughly how much those auxiliary services are going to cost us. And so a lot of their costs are encumbered.
Okay.
So we have an estimate throughout the year. The regular instruction program, A, it's a bigger bucket, and B, there's just a lot of things that kind of go into that. That's where all the building budgets are and things. So they operate at their own pace. And so it just
Okay,
flows differently.
all right, thank
Also,
you.
under the expenditures, community services, the total was 671,000 for the year. Is that community schools?
It's community schools and preschool. I believe, the summer breakfast also runs out of there. The revenue and the expenses go into that category.
And preschool comes out of the community services?
It's just a title on the report based on the state reporting. I don't have control over that, unfortunately.
If we could go back to page 4, the 3-year comparison. So I know that you've said in past meetings that because the yellow is this year and it looks very dramatically different than the past 2 years prior because of changes at the state level. My concern is it's a bigger dip for the January number. Is that also one of those new normals, or is there a specific reason for that you can?
So it's a new normal. So there's a few factors. So I did kind of some math because I was curious too. So as of January, with all the adjustments in the state payment schedule, we're down 2% of our state funding in all of our state funded categories. So
I'm sorry, when you say we're down 2%, you mean we're down 2% for receiving the funds from the
Yes,
state?
Exactly. For receiving
Okay.
the funds year to date, we'll receive
Across
them
the board.
in later months, basically. So that's about $1 million to the district. So $1 million year to date. We'll have another, in May, there's another adjustment. And then basically we get caught up in July. So those are the changes that will basically kind of somewhat create a new pattern. Another thing that happened in January was a SEB insurance payment. So the new insurance for employees, we paid that in January. In December, we did not have a payment. So that also created kind of an abnormal
Spike.
swing in things. That won't happen next year. Next year we'll have a payment for insurance every single month. So we're just kind of going through some humps of
Okay,
different things.
that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, while I'm monopolizing, I'm going to go to page 7. I think that's what it was. This is called Debt Service Fund. Can you, I'm sure I probably ask this question at least every other month, if not every month. Can you remind, what does Debt Service Fund mean?
So the debt service fund is what's used to pay for the debt of the district. So basically pay off the bonds.
Okay.
The prior bonds.
Okay. So you estimate, not necessarily you, it was estimated that $10,000 would come from local support non-tax under revenues. What is
Interest earnings.
interest earnings?
Yeah.
So we're already like at 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that number's low?
Yeah. We'll
In
continue
this
to
case?
get roughly about, what was that, about $800 a month. It kind of obviously depends each month based on the investments, but we'll continue to receive that. That's from the county treasurer. And so basically any money that we're not planning on paying out that month, we invest it so we can earn interest earnings.
Okay,
And that money also is used to pay off the bonds.
perfect. Okay. Those were my specific questions.
I'm on the same page. My question is though, under the revenues over and under expenditures, the minus 976,000, that was because you paid that? Because the actual annual budget was only 108.
Yeah, so this is a 1 month snapshot,
Okay.
whereas the actual for the month is just the actual for the month, and it's only one payment. There's actually 2 payments that go out within a fiscal year. The next one will happen in May.
Then that brings that back. Okay.
hmm Yeah, and the budget is for the whole year.
Okay.
Any other questions? Very good. Moving on to,
I do appreciate that we get to see these monthly and just to be able to understand and just kind of see the snapshot of where we're at. It is, although we ask lots of questions and have, Thank you.
Moving on to item E1, policy review. Review, discussion, revision of current board policies. There's a few of them on here that, well, I know there's a new policy in its first reading. A couple are been revised that we've just been discussing and doing nothing with. So we will start with EL7. Jen, don't know if you were, I know we talked about getting a specific, what you meant. Were you able to talk to Greg and kind of what you?
Oh, yeah, Greg and
You were
I
good.
understand each other where we were
Okay.
both coming from. I thought that you two were going to be talking to Greg so that you could understand his perspective.
I was not able
And
to
his
talk to Greg
thoughts.
myself. But I read this and if, I assume, Chris, that Greg has talked to you about this and what he's thinking. I won't ask you for your interpretation until we actually approve this, then.
I think that we should understand Chris's interpretation or,
Oh, what if we change it, though?
hold on, or perspective at this stage, because then we could go, oh, well, that's not going to work. He doesn't his interpretation of what the intent was is not the same, so therefore we need to make changes. So
Yes.
that's my views.
As the author of that, I'll allow that. Chris, could you tell us what you perceive is the intent of this?
Absolutely. I did have an opportunity to speak with Jen as well. So when we're talking about maintenance, we're talking about the upkeep. So we're not talking about building facilities. We know that's a board responsibility. So we're really talking about a short and long-term maintenance or upkeep plan. Short and long-term, in my opinion, is a 5 to 10 year plan, looking at particular aspects of our organization, our buildings, everything, just the upkeep. One of the components I think I shared with Jen as well is the last bullet, and I understand that piece. However, new facilities or renovation of facilities are at the discretion of the board. I shared with Jen at that time that since the superintendent is being held to present evidence to support that we're in compliance, that I did not feel that that particular bullet was needed, but I understand the other bullets are really around the maintenance and the upkeep, short and long-term plan.
I didn't know where else to put that bullet, so I stuck it there.
And my
So,
point is just, I
right.
would not be able to provide any evidence for that bullet.
So are you okay to remove that bullet?
I would be fine if I would be fine if we moved it or if we modified some of the wording. Maybe, well, I know we have a lot of meetings lately, but maybe we need to have a policy meeting so that we put all the right people in the same room so that we could go through each one by one, and whether we make changes verbally, and then propose those at the next meeting, so that we've had quite a few of these on.
Yeah, but I think.
Same
that-
with Ken's and same with this new one that I'm proposing tonight.
I
so.
think policy governance provides for that. So I think we're doing it the right way. I think we're just taxing ourselves way too much if we request meeting upon meeting upon meeting to discuss every single one of these. So you're okay with striking the bullet altogether and placing it somewhere else? Are you okay with that not being part of your revision to this policy? Do you absolutely got to have that verbiage somewhere in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6?
It doesn't, my view is it does not need, it really shouldn't be in an EL. It shouldn't be under something that's an executive limitation. It should be under a GP because that's how we govern ourselves. I can't find a GP that this applies to unless I make a new GP. Not ready to do that right now, but just so that there was a clear delineation altogether that I guess in the understanding of what the proposal was. I'm fine with it being removed completely.
With the removal of that, I would like to move forward with this.
What do you think, Sharon?
That would be okay to take that out. I just totally think we need a maintenance plan, though. I mean,
No,
we have
absolutely.
to. Otherwise, we're gonna find ourselves back where we are now, and we don't wanna do that.
No, but Chris is correct. I mean, how do we, if we're going to dock them for not renovating a facility that we decided didn't need renovation. I mean, how does that fall on him?
I mean, I,
Okay.
fine
How-
with
What do you
taking
think,
that one
Ken?
out.
No, I'm completely agreeable by removing that last bullet, because that does fall upon us as board to take care of that. And it's not an EL, I don't think, situation, so, but the rest of it, I do believe that we need that maintenance plan.
Does this need to be on a motion, Ken, or can it be by consensus?
I think it has to be a motion,
Motion. 'Cause we're
but,
changing policy.
but we can't, I think we need to take that out and have it as a final
When it
reading
comes
at the
back
next
as a final
meeting,
reading.
if that's what we decide that we're gonna do.
Okay, Talia, if we could at the next meeting have this put in there as a final reading with the removal of the third bullet in number 1. Thank you. BSR 3, I have read this through and through. I am okay with the removal of the any's, but I would like to see the part that Ken would like struck out. I'd like to leave that verbiage in there.
I agree.
I agree too.
I mean, I try to word it a different way, and my intent there, brief conversation Ken and I had, and I couldn't, I mean, I think it speaks for itself, and I'd like to have this as is, if we remove the 2 any's and leave the last sentence of number 4 there.
Sharon, what do you think?
I'd like to see what Ken says after he met with Mike.
After discussing it further with Mike, I seen Mike's view of it. At this time, I would be okay leaving that in for right now,
Yeah.
and striking the word any.
So if we can do that
2
and
times.
have that as the final, the next one too,
Yeah.
that would be
Absolutely.
great. So we can just start moving forward.
Take a note of that,
with
Talia.
these, that we keep going to the next.
Want to come back to it at a different time?
Yes,
Okay,
I think we need to come back to it
Rewriting.
at another.
And at
time.
any time, we can
Rewriting.
modify any policy.
Yes.
7.2,
I think that this was in last week's, our last regular meeting, I think that it was in this one, so unless there's any modifications or changes, I think we could actually approve this one at this meeting.
Under,
Or if not-
weren't we going to move something from section D into required approvals?
yeah, that didn't get, I was supposed to have made,
Oh,
I
that's
apologize.
right.
I was supposed to have made that correction.
Can we do that right now and have
I-
that come back to us for the first reading?
Yes, if we can delete under section D, the first bullet of monitoring reports from superintendents for executive EOs and ends, if it be moved into
Or no, would that be board approval of monitoring response?
Response documents. Yes, thank you. I'm
Bullet-
looking at the
bullet
first
3.
bullet. 3, and it needs to be placed under,
Section C,
C on
required approvals.
required approvals.
So another bullet point under required approvals, is that what you're
No.
referring to?
It would be in required approvals. We're monitoring response documents, we've basically already talked about, discussed, it's the actual signature of the president and superintendent. And then we just go ahead and say, okay, do we approve 1 or approve 3? I mean, we're not gonna change it, we're not gonna modify it, we're not gonna anything.
Right, so
So just
then,
have these included in the required approvals, and it's part of the,
okay,
it's
so
already
then,
approved. It
but-
doesn't have to be its own separate.
right, so what I'm
Vote.
saying is a subsection of required approvals. If we make it its own bullet point under section C, then it's gonna have its
No,
own
it's-
vote.
Basically,
I
we're
think you
removing,
wanted a subsection
I think we're
under,
removing bullet 3 from section D,
okay?
and then
We just internally know that that's
I
where
would-
it's at?
that's where I was gonna go with that,
Okay,
based on the decision we came to, where the explanation, like I said, we can't change this. If we keep it the way it is, we're gonna come up to required there, and again, it's gonna take us an extra 5-6 minutes. We're gonna go through motion, second, any discussion. So, but in order to do this, GP 7, I think, needs to be approved. or it would need to be changed. That's where it would be.
What?
If I'm reading this correctly,
GP7.
Chris?
It's what I was gonna just bring to the board's attention. If you look at GP7, there's a section under there that's noted required approvals. So you can move that to that section if the board will wanna move in that direction. So you just add monitoring response documents under GP7 where it says required approvals.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Then we could just strike it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with that. But then we have to modify GP7.
That,
Yes.
Right.
so it'll come back next time. GP7 will be approved. And then the deletion in 7.2 of bullet number 3 will at the same time occur. If I'm reading that correctly, right, Chris?
Yes.
Both of those will happen concurrently.
Okay, so that'll come back again next week.
Okay. And then Jen has this super nice GP 7.3. This is the first
I
reading.
am the new Tony.
Jen, can we make changes to this? Can we?
Yep,
we
you can
add
make
stuff?
changes. So let me give you some background as to this. If you go under currently our meeting agenda and look under public comment under B1, I took this from there and I made a few changes. After doing some research and trying to figure out who wrote this, where did it come from, when did it come? Former board members told me that they thought George wrote this. And so I did some tweaks. I updated some information that was no longer current. And so we could also, if we decided to, put GP7, if we approved GP 7.3 or modified it and then finally approved it, we could put it here if we just so decided, because it specifically talks about the public comment. And after the public comment training that was had, I listened to that recording and then did the OPMA training again to update myself as to the state things as well. That's where I came from this information. I'm happy with changes, or at least discussing possible changes.
Yeah, no, as I read this, I mean, one of the things that stuck to me was like under the process at the meeting, the last bullet, board limits the time devoted to all public comments to 30 minutes. What if we have more than 10 people that want to speak that night? I mean, that just, all of a sudden, I went back to one of the breakouts at WASDA and a specific situation that occurred in that town and how a revolt, I guess you could call, and they had the entire community there wanting to speak. And if we adopt this and we say, okay, the first 10, or, I mean, that's why I asked if tweaking was available, because I want to go back to, and maybe make a phone call to those folks, because I don't recall exactly how they handled that, but they do have a very delineated process. And I just wanted to see if whatever they were doing would enhance this. I think 30 minutes is a good amount of time, but if we have,
Right.
the last thing we want to do is say, okay, there's 30 of you here, but only 10 of you get to speak, so draw straws or what we would
I understand
do
your
there.
perspective. I think that if there's something like that that's happening, then we definitely need to be making another meeting for that.
I was thinking more along, if there's 12 people here, that there's a caveat there to where 30, maximum 45 or something.
And
where
we can
don't-
always modify
That's what I'm
our
saying.
own things, on the fly if that is something that needed to take place. That's if every single person took 30
Sure.
minutes. We've already had a meeting where there were 9 public comments and it didn't take 30 minutes.
Well, that's because we don't have our 3 minutes up here. and-
We did have the 3 minutes up there. Anyways, not everybody takes 3 minutes.
Sure.
And some people you have to say, okay, you're done, also. And so then also, it doesn't specifically say this, but at the beginning of when public comment is started or getting ready, or especially if there's more than one person, something like addressing the board, that section could be read out loud.
Okay. I say we read this thoroughly, guys, and gals, I'm sorry. And if we have any changes, amendments, or whatever, we get those to Talia so she can make them in blue, I guess, since Jen has
In a
its own
different
red.
assorted colors. It's always traditionally been red. That's the only reason why I picked red.
that's
I
fine.
would have picked another color.
That's fine.
Anyways, so that we're all different colors so that
Sure.
we can see who made what modifications. And we can't approve something at a first reading
No.
anyways. This is way too monumental.
I know.
So,
So are we okay with that?
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to make any changes to this, we get those changes to Talia so they can be delineated at the next meeting. Very good. Well, having said that, we will go into a 5-minute recess now, and we will break into executive session tonight. We will go into executive session for 60 minutes to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase, and to review the performance of a public employee. No action will be taken after the executive session. We will take a recess now. We will reconvene for the executive session in Chris's quarters at 8:20, and it'll be for 60 minutes. Thank you for being here.